Hello, friends. It's good to see you again, or maybe for the very first time. I want you to imagine we're sitting together in my living room. Maybe you're in your favorite chair, wrapped in that soft old blanket you keep for good days, a warm drink in hand. There's something about this age, a certain quiet courage, a clarity that comes only from walking through life's storms and sunny days. Today I want to share 8 quiet lessons, secrets really, that only start to whisper their truths after 60. I've collected these from my own journey and from the stories of people I love. People like my neighbor Frank, who bakes banana bread when he can't sleep. My sister Linda, who dances barefoot in her kitchen. Or Margaret, who once sent a letter to her first crush at 70, just to say thank you for a memory. Maybe as I share, you'll recognize a piece of your own story. Or maybe you'll hear something that sparks hope for tomorrow. Either way, I hope you'll stay with me. Let's begin softly, gently, with a lesson that surprised me most. Lesson 1. Time isn't just passing. It's precious. When you're young, time feels endless. There's always next year, next month, next weekend. You race through milestones, graduations, marriages, first homes, little league games, barely noticing how the seasons slip by. But after 60, something shifts. You notice the light in late afternoon, the way it falls golden across the kitchen floor. You start to mark birthdays, not just by cakes and candles, but by who's there, and sometimes who isn't. Let me tell you about Jack. Jack was a firefighter for 35 years, the sort of man who never seemed afraid of anything. One afternoon as we sat in his backyard, he looked at his hands scarred, strong, a little arthritic now, and said, "You know, after I turned 60, time started whispering instead of shouting. I don't want to waste it, but I wish I'd realized sooner just how rare it is." He talked about the little moments he'd missed, skipping his daughter's dance recital for a shift he could have traded, the fishing trip he kept postponing with his son. He didn't say it with regret exactly, but with a softness. It made me think about my own some days, all the promises I made to myself. I'll learn to paint someday. I'll take that trip when the kids are older. Sound familiar? Then there's Diane, my old college friend. For decades, she put herself last, kids, grandkids, church bake sales, everything before her own dreams. On her 62nd birthday, she finally bought a set of oil paints and signed up for a class. "Because time isn't waiting for me anymore," she said with a little smile. 3 years later, her home is filled with color. Every wall a patchwork of scenes she once only dreamed of painting. Sometimes time only starts to feel precious once you've lost a little of it. When my father passed away, I remember sitting in his empty chair, sunlight slanting through the window, wishing for just one more conversation, one more story. Maybe you know that feeling. So what's your someday? Who's your Diane? Your Jack? What little wish have you tucked away, thinking you'd get to it eventually? Maybe this is the moment to stop waiting for the right time, to call the friend you haven't spoken to in years, to write that letter, to forgive, or to try something you always thought was just a little out of reach. Because time, after 60, is no longer a rushing river. It's a quiet pond. What you do with it, every ripple, matters more than ever. Lesson 2. Your body is your oldest friend. Treat it kindly. If you're anything like me, you've woken up some mornings after 60 and wondered, what's that new ache? Where did that bruise come from? Did I really sleep wrong, or is this just how things are now? We laugh about it, Frank and I, sitting on the porch. "If I wake up and nothing hurts, I must be dead," he jokes. But underneath the laughter, there's a quiet truth. Our bodies are our oldest, most loyal friends. They carry every joy and scar, every triumph and stumble. Linda, my sister, 3 years older than me, was never a health nut. In her 40s and 50s, she'd say, "Life's too short for low-fat cheese." But after her 60th birthday, she got a wake-up call. A bout of pneumonia that left her winded just climbing stairs. It scared her, but it also changed her. She started walking every morning, even if it was only to the mailbox at first. She bought a little set of hand weights, watched YouTube videos on stretches for stiff hips and sore knees. 6 months later, She's not running marathons, but she can walk her grandkids to the park. She bakes on weekends, but chooses fruit instead of cake during the week. It's not about looking young, she says. It's about being here for them and for me. Sometimes it's easy to feel angry at our bodies for aging. But what if instead we thank them? Thank you, legs, for carrying me through decades of steps. Thank you, heart, for beating through heartbreak and hope. Thank you, hands, for holding, building, comforting. I remember the first time I danced again after my back surgery. It wasn't pretty, just a slow sway in the living room with my wife, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. How can you treat your body with a little more kindness today? Maybe it's water instead of soda, a nap, guilt-free, 5 minutes of gentle stretching before bed. Maybe it's scheduling that checkup you've been avoiding, or simply listening to what your body needs, not just pushing through. After 60, your body asks you for patience, forgiveness, and care. Listen to it. It's your oldest friend, and it wants you to stay as long as possible. Lesson 3. Loneliness is real, but connection is always possible. No one talks enough about loneliness after 60. It can sneak up quietly the day your spouse passes, the first holiday when the house feels too big, the week your children are busy with their own lives. Even when you're surrounded by people, it's possible to feel invisible. Margaret, a woman I met at the community center, always has a book under her arm and a twinkle in her eye. But over coffee, she once confessed, "My sons love me, but their lives are full. Sometimes I feel like a piece of old furniture, reliable, but forgotten." I've felt that too. The phone that doesn't ring as often, invitations that stop arriving, the ache of old friends moving away or moving on. What helped me, and Margaret, was reaching out, even when it felt awkward. She joined a book club where she was the oldest by 15 years, but the first to show up and the last to leave. She started volunteering at the library, helping kids with their reading. "I went from one call a week to people looking for me every Tuesday," she said, laughing. For me, connection sometimes came in the smallest ways, a chat with my barber, waving at the mail carrier, saying yes to church potlucks, even when I'd rather stay home. One day I called my old college roommate, Tom, after 20 years of silence. He picked up on the second ring, and just hearing his voice felt like finding a lost part of myself. If you're lonely, I promise you, you are not the only one. Is there someone you could call today, just to say hello? Is there a local group you could join, or an online community you could explore? Could you be the one to make the first move to reach out, to invite, to reconnect? Loneliness is real, but so is hope. You don't need a crowd. Sometimes one good conversation is all it takes to feel alive again. Lesson 4. Purpose doesn't retire, it evolves. Retirement sounds wonderful until you actually get there and realize no one tells you how to fill your days. George, a retired engineer and one of the smartest people I know, called me 2 weeks into retirement. "I'm bored out of my mind," he said. "Turns out I don't like fishing that much, and the house can only be so clean." Purpose doesn't end with a gold watch or a farewell party. It changes shape. For George, it became volunteering teaching science to third graders, helping out at the food pantry. For Margaret, it's reading with kids at the library. For Linda, it's starting a garden and leaving fresh herbs on her neighbors' porches. For me, purpose evolved into storytelling, sharing the lessons I've learned, hoping they'll land where they're needed. Sometimes purpose comes quietly. I think of my neighbor, Ed, who adopted an old rescue dog after his wife died. "He needed a home," Ed told me, "but I think I needed him more." If you're feeling adrift, I hear you. It's easy to lose yourself when the labels change from boss to retiree, from parent to empty nester. But your purpose now is just as real as it ever was, maybe more so. What small thing brings you joy or meaning? Is it baking, mentoring, gardening, writing letters to friends? Could you try something new? Just for the pleasure of it, not to be useful, but to be fully alive? Purpose isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet pull to get out of bed, to nurture, to create, to care. Let yourself follow it. You never know what gifts it will bring. Lesson 5. Grief never really leaves, but neither does love. Grief is the shadow side of love. After 60, you start to lose people you thought you'd have forever: siblings, best friends, even your life partner. No matter how prepared you think you are, it always feels like a surprise. Helen lost her husband, Jim, after 42 years of marriage. The first year, she says, was like living with an empty chair at every table. She leaned on her kids, her church, even her book club, but the ache didn't fade. One afternoon, we sat on her porch as the sun went down. She told me, "Some days I feel the loss like a wave, but other days it's like a gentle tide, bringing back sweet memories instead of pain." Helen started a journal, writing letters to Jim every morning. "I tell him about the birds, about the weather, about the little things I wish he could see. It helps me remember the love, not just the loss." When my mother passed, I found myself talking to her photo every evening, asking her advice, sharing my worries. It sounds silly, but it kept her close. Maybe you too are carrying grief, for someone you loved or for the life you thought you'd have. It's okay. There's no right way or timeline to grieve. Some days will be heavy. Others will feel lighter. What memory brings you both joy and sadness? How can you honor that love today by telling a story, lighting a candle, cooking their favorite meal? Let yourself feel. Let yourself remember. Love, like grief, is forever. Lesson 6. Letting go is an underrated superpower. After 60, you realize that holding on, whether to old grudges, hurts, or expectations, just gets heavier. I used to carry a grudge against an old friend, Susan, who I felt had let me down in our 30s. I replayed the arguments, the words said and unsaid, for years. Then at a friend's funeral, I saw her older, softer, looking just as tired of it all as I was. We stood outside the church, the rain making everything seem new, and I said, "Susan, I don't even remember what we were fighting about. Do you?" She laughed, and suddenly we were two kids again, giggling in the rain. Letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace over resentment, choosing to move forward rather than stay stuck. Carol, my old neighbor, let go of her need to control everything when her husband fell ill. I used to run the house like a ship. After Bill got sick, I realized I couldn't plan everything. I had to let people help. And you know what? It didn't make me weaker. It made me feel loved. What are you holding on to that's weighing you down? A grudge? Guilt? An old story about yourself? Write it down, say it out loud, or simply breathe it out. Then imagine putting it down just for today. Every time you let go, you create space for something new. A friendship, a possibility, a little more light. Lesson 7. Change is inevitable. And so is growth. The world moves fast, sometimes too fast for comfort. But after 60, you learn that resisting change only makes it harder. Frank, at 78, is my role model for embracing change. When his kids moved across the country, he learned to use FaceTime. When his doctor told him to cut down on red meat, he learned new recipes: chickpea stew, veggie chili. When he lost his old poker buddies, he joined an online history club and made friends from places he's never even visited. Frank told me, "Every time I tried something new, I thought I'd hate it. But 9 times out of 10, I ended up loving it." "Why not just stick with what you know, Frank?" He shrugged. "Because I'm still alive. Might as well keep living." Change can be scary. I was terrified of technology for years. Now I FaceTime my grandkids, listen to podcasts, even started an Instagram to share my garden. Still learning how to use hashtags, though. What's one small change you could welcome instead of fear? A new hobby? A new way of connecting? A new routine? Is there something you've been avoiding simply because it's unfamiliar? Growth doesn't stop at 60 or 80 or even 100. It only stops when you stop trying. Lesson 8. Joy is found in the smallest moments. If there's one lesson that grows clearer with age, it's this: the biggest happiness often lives in the tiniest moments. I used to chase after big events, birthdays, holidays, vacations. But now I find joy in the ordinary: a cup of coffee in the early morning quiet, the first crocus poking through winter earth, my granddaughter's laughter echoing down the hallway. Linda, my sister, finds joy feeding the birds in her backyard. She knows each one by name: Bluebell, Chipper, Red. She keeps a notebook of their visits and says, "They remind me that every day is different. Every day is worth noticing." Sometimes happiness is a soft blanket, a good book, or the sun warming your face through the window. When my grandson visits, we bake cookies, flour everywhere, dough in his hair. For those 2 hours, nothing else matters. What small, ordinary thing brought you joy today? Can you let yourself savor it, really feel it without rushing on to the next task? After 60, you realize life isn't about chasing joy. It's about noticing it right where you are. Thank you truly for being here, for listening, for reflecting, for living these lessons in your own way. I hope you found a piece of yourself in these stories, maybe in Jack's hands, Linda's walks, Frank's FaceTime calls, or Margaret's book club. I hope you know you're not alone. You're not too old, not too late, not behind. As long as you're breathing, you're still becoming. The next chapter is yours to write. If you felt comfort here, share this video. Leave a comment, tell me which lesson spoke to you. Share your story. Ask your question. Let's build a circle, a real community where wisdom grows and no one has to feel invisible. The quiet lessons are the ones that last. And the world needs your story, your kindness, your hope now more than ever. Thank you for being here, friend. Until next time, take care of yourself and don't forget to look for joy in the smallest moments.